Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be. My name is Dalibor Petrovic, and I'm the host of these TechTonic Conversations, a series of live webcasts that we've been putting on to bring to you interesting guests who have important things to say on the topic of technology, entrepreneurship, tech leadership. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome a colleague and a friend, Ashif Mawji. Ashif, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So Ashif is a legend of Canadian and Alberta tech entrepreneurship, a philanthropist, a social impact venture capitalist, an investor, and a community builder. I am very much looking forward to this conversation. Ashif, you and I had a pleasure to collaborate a little bit a couple of years back, and we've known each other for a number of years. I know you have a lot of wisdom to share, and I look forward to this. As the audience would know, these are actually live sessions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit using the Q&A function of the screen of the Zoom platform. And we'll do our best to address as many questions as we can. I typically do not spend a lot of time introducing my guests. Instead, I prefer to ask them to tell us their story. So, Ashif, maybe we'll start with just the origin story. I know that origin story actually starts on a different continent.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, thanks for having me. I was born in Kenya, and very fortunate to have parents and grandparents that were entrepreneurs, and the values that were instilled in my brother and I were one of be kind, think about others, help others, and work hard. Right? It was very, very simple values, and we didn't have much growing up. We had food, we had water, we had the essentials. And then watching, for me especially, it was I remember going to my grandparents' house in Tanzania during the summers, during school holidays, and they had like a kind of like a convenience shop, right? And sold everything because it was a very small town, maybe 100 people lived there, maybe.
Yeah.
And so, his shop had, kerosene, it had bread, it had everything, right? And I remember, him teaching me why things were priced the way they were. And this is, like I'm maybe 6, 7 years old, in that range.
Okay.
And I'd go to work with him, right? And he'd teach me. He'd say, well, milk, bread, people buy lots of.
Yeah.
Volume. And so you have a very small profit margin.
Yeah.
Other things, a battery, like a car battery, they might buy once a year. Okay. So the margins are different.
Yeah.
And then it was all cash business. So, there's no credit cards at that time. So every day, the best part for me was at night, I would count the money, right? And so I think to me, that was kind of the start of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
If you will.
And the catnip. That was the catnip.
Exactly. And then, learning again from my parents, my mom and dad, both entrepreneurs. And so I had the bug very early.
Yeah.
And then, I loved computing. While my friends loved playing games, I loved programming because I just saw computers as a way to make life easier.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and then again, kudos to my parents because I wanted a lot of things. I loved to play the keyboard. I loved riding motorcycles. And I remember them saying, yeah, you can have anything you want. You just have to pay for it. Right. So it taught me to find ways. Yeah. So I would sell watches, like we have farmers markets here in Kenya. We had something similar. Mm-hmm. And so Friday I'd get some watches in consignment, so no capital outlay. Sell it on the weekend, Monday return what I didn't sell and split the profits with the shop owner, right? And that's how I got my money.
Wow.
And then would go to England once a year as a vacation. We have family there. I'd buy 2 computers, right?
Yeah.
Come back, sell one for twice the price. Yeah. And so now my computer is free. So that's how I was very young, but I was learning. And so when we moved to Canada in 87, I had to come here with nothing. And that's the problem is when you leave a country like Kenya, you're not allowed to take what you have. Okay, so you come here with basically nothing and you start again. But those entrepreneurship roots and teaching, and that's why I believe I can take a lot of risks, because even if I lose it all, I can make it all back up again.
You can make it back.
I just have that. Yeah, have that. So that's a quick back.
That's such a wonderful, actually, statement you just made. That, like, you're not afraid, right? You've been there. You know what it's like. You trust yourself. You know how to actually how to put a business together, and such a wonderful expression of confidence. I wish, actually, I was speaking to a lot of people around Canadian entrepreneurship, Canadian business, and there is a consistent theme that, we are generally risk adverse at every level, and that if there was something that we could do to change and improve, it would be to actually get some risk appetite flowing, right? You have just articulated the right attitude. So thank you very much for that. So Ashif, you moved to Canada in 1987, right? 87.
Right.
And very soon afterwards, as we know now, you essentially started your first big business in Canada. Can you tell us a little bit more about Upside Software? What was the sort of the generation of that idea? How did you actually build it into a world-leading solution out of Edmonton? Like, tell us a little bit more about that story.
Yeah, for sure. So, Dalbert, what a lot of people don't know is I actually had other companies before Upside Software.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I graduated from NAIT in 1992.
Okay.
And I took the program at that time was called CST, Computing Systems Technology.
Mm-hmm.
2-year program, and I think, again, as an individual, I encourage you to know yourself, right? And so for me, I knew that I have a very low attention span.
Okay.
And I'm very practical, right? I don't like theory. I don't like reading. I like doing. So, instruction manual, give me the summary and I'll figure it out. That's me. Right? I'm not going to read the whole thing.
A tinker.
So
Thinker and a tinker.
Exactly. And so when I did my research, I found, for me, NAIT was going to be the best solution.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it had all the elements of doing things practically.
Yeah.
Graduated. Unlike all my colleagues who got a really good job, at an IBM or at the government or wherever, I decided to go out on my own. And so I've been on a contract.
Right out.
Yeah, I never worked. Yeah. So got a contract with the government of Alberta as my one company, well, me as the sole employee. And it was it was a very administratively intensive contract, which is not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I knew it was a foot in. I got in there and I proved myself.
And you were essentially doing like software development right out of school, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For the government of Alberta, perhaps one of their ministries as an external contractor.
It's exactly. It was that time it was called social services.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And so anyway, so they got me to do this one job, which was in those days we had mainframe computers, right? So now their ministries all across Alberta, and every department, every municipality had its own mini mainframe. And so this was to collect the data from each one, amalgamate it, and then come up with reporting. But it meant getting faxes and like all that kind of stuff to bring in the data and then literally type it in and all that. And I said, well, this is a lot of work, right? and should it be a lot of work? And so I devised a system using Excel, using macros.
Yeah.
And created a routine. And so all I had to do is ship out this floppy disk to each site. They had to run it, right? And it would then send the information over. And the macros would just crunch it. And so I did all this. And I remember telling my manager, I'm like, I got something to show you. I showed him this and he was really upset. I'm like, I don't understand. I go, I just, like, a week's worth of work I can do in 5 minutes using this. He goes, yeah. He goes, that's the problem. He goes, I hired you for that week's worth of work because you just worked yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
I go, or you let me do these other things, like the programming stuff that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Thought about it. He goes, okay, all right. He goes, but if I ever need you, you come to me first. So then he allowed me to work for others, right? And I built a relationship. Long story short, in 1995, that department was outsourcing, and along with a very large, multi-billion-dollar company, I won a $60 million outsourcing deal. So overnight, I went from myself. Well, at that time, I probably had 3 or 4 people with me, to over 150 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So talk about lessons learned. I've never managed 150 people. Payroll, like all that stuff, right? So that was the formation of that first company, and then that company grew, and then came Y2K. So we had contracts across North America to do it. So it was it did really well financially, that company.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So that was the origin of Upside software, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now because of all those contracts that I had in that company, right, and trying to manage that, again, it was the same problem as my first day at the government. Is I'm like, we're doing all this stuff manually using Excel. There's got to be a better way. Yes. And so I talked to folks from PCL and some of the large companies, Stantec, around Edmonton, and in different disciplines, CFO, legal, general counsel, salesperson, etc. And I said, this is what I do for contracts. Do you do something different? And they're like, no, we do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it kind of validated that there's a need.
Yeah.
And so that's how Upside was created.
Right.
It was contract management. It was actually to help people like me manage all these contracts. Right.
You are like, the necessity is the mother of invention. You have been essentially paying attention and identifying where can you automate things that people have not thought of, or thought that it's too complex for them to do on their own.
Right.
This
exactly.
The necessity is the mother of invention. So then what happens with Upside?
Yeah. So then, it was again, like any startup. Now for me, so in between those, I had 2 other businesses as well, product companies and hardware companies. So, when IVR, interactive voice response, just came out, there was, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was the deputy minister at social services, and he was intent on cutting jobs because that was the mandate given by, at that time, it was Premier Ralph Klein.
Yeah.
And there were 13 people that all their job was every day was to pick up the phone, because somebody getting a welfare check would be calling to say, how much am I getting and when am I getting it? That was the question. But there were 13 full-time people to do that. I created a whole module using dialogic boards and so forth, that you just call the same number, but you put in it wasn't a SIN number, it was something else, like an identity number. You put that in, you validated it, and he would tell you exactly, because we knew what questions they were going to ask. So it was a way to eliminate 13 positions, and it became a product that I eventually sold to another company and so forth. So there were 2 things like that.
2 things like that.
Yeah. It just, again, I always look at things and go, well, this could be done better, right? Using technology.
Yeah.
And then if you do, and it works, and people are willing to pay for it, then there's somebody willing to buy it.
Yeah.
Right. And so you do that. So with Upside, first year was very tough because the bubble had just burst. Right. So
we are now 2001, 2001.
Well, more 2000, because Upside, I believe, was incorporated in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And so the bubble had just burst.
Yep.
There's no money. Right. If you're going to look for investment, everybody would laugh at you. Yeah, I'm not investing in tech. Right.
Yeah.
So I created this company and never really done a major product company. So a lot of lessons to be learned, right? Made a lot of mistakes, and pretty much ran out of money. I had maybe 2 months left of payroll. That's it. Didn't tell anybody. Okay. And I also just got married. So, it was a lot of pressure. We bought a house. Um,
Oh my God.
and it's like, so obviously my wife knew, but didn't tell anybody else. Right. And I kind of, you know, burdened like all that weight was on my shoulders. And I said, okay, well, I'll figure it out. And so I went to go raise capital, and I knew North America would be a challenge. So I
Yeah.
went to the UK, and I have family there, and they've always been like incredibly supportive of me. And so my uncle lined up a bunch of investors, and we were supposed to be there for a week. My wife and I went there. It was also kind of not a honeymoon, but it was kind of like a getaway. We just got married, right? So
Well,
so why not go to Europe?
honeymoon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So day one, we had a dinner. I raised the full amount in one dinner. Like,
Really?
yeah, just because they invested in me. They for the longest time they thought we built computers. It was just, he goes, yeah, how's that computer building going? I go, we don't
We
build
don't build
computers.
computers. We build product, but the product is soft.
It was funny, right? But it was just, and I said, well, why did you invest? They're like, we invested in you. We knew you would figure it out. We didn't really care what you did. We
Yeah.
just knew you were going to make it work.
And that is such a powerful statement and true statement, Ashif. I think that I've been, of course, curious and listening and being active in our industry for many, many years. And if I've heard one thing consistently from investors is that, yes, ideas are good, but I'm betting on a person. I'm betting on the passion. I'm betting on your commitment to see it through.
That's exactly it, right? And that's we'll talk about my journey right now as an investor,
Yes,
but that's a
yes,
key thing we look for. And so
yes.
raise that money. And
Yeah.
then now I had 6 days left. And so my wife and I went to Spain. And we went to Valencia and a couple other spots, and it made a holiday of it, right?
Yeah.
Because knowing when I come back, it's gonna be, you know,
It's gonna be
full
fine,
speed.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Came back and got the team energized and started now winning big companies. Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. At that time, they were number 2 railway in North America.
Wow.
Multi-billion dollar, and railway is old, which means it's an older way of thinking, very conservative.
Yeah.
The bubble had just burst. So they wanted to come meet us in Edmonton. They wanted to touch and feel us because they'd heard about all these software companies in the valley that were really big, right? Like they didn't
Mm-hmm.
exist. There's
Yeah.
nothing there. They came here, and it was funny because I'm very frugal. And so, the office had used chairs, used furniture,
Yeah.
and we always, sitting at the conference table, we always had to figure out which is the chair that's broken, right? Now, the BNSF team comes, and this is the vice president of sourcing. Leanne was her name. And she's about to sit on the chair that was broken.
Oh my
And
God.
I was like, oh shit. Right? Like, and she sat on it and it fell. And I'm
Oh.
like, I'm so sorry. Right? And she started laughing. And she said, I like this. I go, explain. She goes, I can see that you obviously, she's almost making fun of she goes, I can see you don't invest in furniture.
Yeah.
You invest in your people and the
Yes.
software. And she
Yeah.
goes, that's what we're looking for.
Wow.
And so they partnered with us. They bought our software. They knew we needed the money, so they paid us up front. Okay.
Wow.
And they said, look, we're going to do all this stuff. We just want you to work with us and make sure the product works, and it's critical for us. So we did that, and she became our biggest champion. She would go on to, because she was a well-renowned speaker and professional in her space, so she'd get invited to speak at all these big conferences. And she'd always talk about us, and we'd always exhibit there, so we'd get more sales. So we didn't need salespeople because she would just go out and talk, and she was the customer.
Wow.
Right.
That is another gold nugget of wisdom, and I think I think that you have created the fortunate circumstance you found yourself in, right? But so critical to have a phenomenal customer number one. If you can find
Indeed.
a phenomenal customer number one, right? That is, I think, make it or break it moment. Make it or break
Totally.
it moment, right?
And I think it's important for businesses to understand that you have to do, you know, a lot for them to make them happy,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of investment because if they weren't happy, she would not be going out there and talking about us,
Well, yeah.
right? So it was important. So we made sure it was amazing for her and her team. So she
Yes.
got it, so she was happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
Then came Hewlett Packard. Now, Hewlett Packard, interesting because we were one of 12, I think, people that had bid on the RFP, and we were not the favorite. There was a company in the Valley
Hmm.
whose CEO knew at that time, Carly Fiorina was the
Yeah.
CEO of HP.
Yeah, Carly.
They
Yeah.
were buddies. I think the kids went to school together or whatever. Like they're very close. So it was very likely going to be them.
Hmm.
And they had raised $75 million in capital. We had nowhere near that. So they were the gold standard, if you will.
Yeah.
We did our pitch. Product came across really well. We got shortlisted, and then they again wanted to come visit. Now they came in February, and the fellow, his name is Luis. He's Spanish, and I remember I picked him up from the Delta downtown. It was -30, and he just wore like a leather jacket. And I wouldn't use the words he used, but he said, "This is very cold." He goes, "How do you people live here?" Right? And then we took him, obviously to our office and all that stuff, and we built a really good relationship. And he told me all this stuff. He said, "Look, you're not the number one. You
Yeah.
have this, but your product is better." And at the end of the day, the product won, and they picked us. And again, same thing. He said, "Look, we were negotiating," and he said, "I actually want you to raise your price. Your price is too low." Okay, I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You don't understand us. We're Hewlett Packard. We're huge. We're complicated. We're going to drag you down."
Mm.
Right? So he was trying to
Yeah.
help me. He's like, I go, "Why are you telling me all this?" He goes, because I want you to be successful. Because if you're not, this is a mission critical. This is now when HP and Compaq were merging. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
knew,
Yeah.
and they were offering a buyout. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, "We know a lot of people are going to take the buyout. Contract management is going to be key." He
Yes.
goes, "I don't want
Yes.
this to fail."
Yeah.
So he goes, "I want to make sure you're successful." So again, good partnership. After that, Dalibor, like we were winning, like,
Yeah.
every
This
deal.
is
Like
yeah.
you name the company, Nike, Shell, Boeing, IBM, Google, Apple, everybody was our customer. We were number
Amazing.
one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So top of the world leading software company in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And so the growth continues. At some point, I think, and now remind me, I don't know exactly the year, but I'm assuming 2008, 2007, 2008 is when
Or what?
for Upside Software and your exit.
No, it was 2012.
Oh, is it 12?
Yeah.
So okay. So it's been so then over a decade. Fantastic.
Yeah, because I was turning 40 in 2012.
And
Yeah.
that is your first exit, material
Yeah.
exit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was, it was kind of like, I like anybody else, I have check boxes to tick, right?
Yeah.
And my last checkbox was I just wanted to be number one, officially ranked by all the analysts. So Gartner, Forrester, at that time it was an AMR, and I wanted to be, because nobody had ever gotten the number one spot in all three. And I said that was my checkbox, because it was now independently vetted, with a very complex scoring model, beating out entities like SAP and Microsoft and multi-billion dollar. We beat them all in all three. Even though SAP was a major sponsor of one of the analysts, and I know they pushed back. They're like, but the analyst was very firm. He's like, "Nope, this is the company that won, and we're sticking by it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Heads off. What a phenomenal story. So then comes 2012, and you exit Upside. You sold the company.
Yeah.
And now what? Right? The moment for Ashif's kindness and care for others while still being a businessman chapter is starting, I guess, right?
So and that's where the roots come, again from back home, right? In Kenya, I remember, I'm a Ismaili Muslim, and every Friday we'd go to mosque, and after mosque, my parents would take my brother and I to kind of like the inner city or the downtown area, right? And there's a lot of homeless people there, and we'd go to each one and give them. Kenya uses the currency shillings, right? So money to each one. And I always wondered, like, we don't have a lot ourselves. Why are we giving money to others? And again, my parents said, no matter how little you have, somebody has even less. Right? And so it's important to share. And so that fundamental principle has lived with us, right? And and that resonates also in my wife's family because it's the same background, right? So giving back has always been inherent in us. No matter what we have, how little or how much we have, we'll always have to give.
So therefore philanthropy becomes focus, right? And we who live in Alberta would know that your family has made a significant investment in NATE, that you have opened a computer center, Mawji Center, for innovation, I think is at NATE. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And what was the rationale and why NATE? What was the story behind Mawji Center?
Yeah, the center is focused on basically on entrepreneurship. Right, which obviously leverages innovation, technology, and so forth. When my wife and I were chatting, it was like, how can we make a material impact, right? And really help foster entrepreneurship, right? Because you look, especially in our culture, it's the parents are telling you, be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, an engineer, etc. And you never hear an entrepreneur.
Yeah, all versions of go get a job and get a safe job that pays well, that will never incentivize you to actually create something for you on your own.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah.
That, I think, defined the last 100 years, maybe even two.
Yeah. So, it was kind of like, well, how do we allow people, students, to explore? I'm not saying entrepreneurship is for everybody. And entrepreneurship is not you creating your own business. It could be you using those skills in an employer situation. So, entrepreneur, right? Because whether you work at, at IBM or at TELUS or wherever else, you can still be an entrepreneur and bring those creative thinking. So it was, well, what can we do? So we'll work with NATE, again, because, NATE for me has worked out really well. They're very entrepreneurial as an entity, and very practical. So I thought, well, let's see what we can do there. We chatted with them, and they're like, yeah, we can create the center and, and help students, explore entrepreneurship. And that's what we did.
Fantastic. Congratulations. And thank you on behalf of our community. That was really a wonderful move. So fast forward to where we are today. You are the managing director of Scale Good Fund. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about like what are you doing these days and what Scale Good Fund is, and maybe a little bit of stories of people that you are working with, investing? Like, I'm very curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, with everything, it's the why behind it, right? So when and I started angel investing back in 2006. So even when I was still operational at Upside, I'd started investing in multiple companies. So I really liked investing. And so we have a family office fund. That fund has about 150 roughly companies in it. And, like, I love data. And so you analyze, the companies that did well, why did they do well? The companies that didn't do well, why? And, when you look at that, the net is the companies that did really well had a mission, they were doing something, a purpose.
There was a why. There was a clear, compelling why.
Exactly. They were helping with healthcare or education or environment or whatever.
Yeah.
And in most cases, they had a diverse set of founders. So female founders, or just a very diverse set of C-suite. And and I learned that too, at so I'm a Henry Crown Fellow, and I remember our very first session in Aspen. There's 20 of us in the room, and I'm expecting the other 19 to be entrepreneurs and so forth, and no, you know, there's one that ran a ballet company, one that's a professor at Harvard, and so forth and so forth. And initially, like in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to learn anything here, right? Because they're all different.
Yeah.
And boy, was I wrong, because I learned a lot more than I ever thought I would. Like differing opinions and opinions that actually go against you is where you get the most value from,
Yeah.
right? So if you think about it in the business, if you have that, diverse set of thinking, you get to a much better solution because you think about the yeah buts, right? Whereas if everybody's thinking like you, you're
Yeah.
going to
Well,
miss that.
exactly. How are you going to learn from everybody who agrees with you?
Exactly. And so that was scale good, right? So the thesis is, again, we're looking for, companies that have a mission, have an impact, and I'm a capitalist, right? So I still want the companies to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go back. So, I get a lot, not a lot, but a number of not-for-profits. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, but it's not something we invest in.
Yes.
So we only invest in for-profit companies.
Yeah.
And then, we look at the founding team, to our earlier discussion, because we invest in pre-seed and seed. It's really, I gotta believe that founder and founders can actually do it. I know what they're starting to do is probably what they're not going to do because they're going to have to pivot. Things change, right? And so, can they pivot? Will they pivot? Will they have that energy and drive when everything's against them and they have 1 month of payroll left? Will they survive? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And if I believe in that, we invest in them.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And the investments that you're making, around any particular geography, or do you invest internationally? How does that?
All over the world. Yeah, all over the world. So we have companies in Europe, we have one in Africa, the vast majority obviously in North America. In Edmonton, we have quite a few. There's one here, Nia Health, really cool company. Obviously on proactive and preventative health, and so they do a blood draw, and out of the blood draw you get about 50 biomarkers or so. They do gut biome testing. They do DEXA scans, VO2 max, and everything. Ultimately, they give you a holistic report on you and tell you this is probably the path you're going down. Maybe you're pre-diabetic, and your blood sugar levels are high, or your cholesterol levels are getting to the point where, and then they give you actions. Do this, do this, do this. And it's all AI driven, right? And you have a dashboard and so forth. So very cool. And that's an Edmonton-based company. We have Areto Labs as an example, who look at social media, and really what they're doing is they're trying to eradicate hatred, right? And helping by, sometimes I might say something and I think it's fine, but it isn't. And their tool kind of helps you in that, saying, you said this, it could be taken differently.
Sensitivity analysis.
Yeah.
And sentiment analysis. Sorry?
Yeah. Like, here's a better way of saying it. So they help you, they coach you, right?
Yeah,
so sports teams are using them. 3 female founders, amazing team, like just rock stars. And they're again from Edmonton, and they're winning business in Europe, in the soccer leagues there and so forth. It's exciting to see. I think the Oilers are using them as well and so forth.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah. So the companies that you are investing, so they're all for profit, obviously. Yeah. It's an investment business. And is there a particular sort of category you're looking? It sounds to me like you are investing in companies that are creating software products first and foremost. Is that fair?
The vast majority, 99.5%. There's one company you've invested in, which builds clothing, adaptive clothing. So not just for elderly citizens, but even like, let's say you're injured, you hurt your knee or whatever, you're in rehab, it's going to be hard to put on pants,
Yeah.
right? And so they have pants with magnetic enclosures, right? So rather than trying to pull up a zipper or buttons or whatever, like your hand dexterity may not be great, it's all magnetic and stuff. So, great company. They're based out in New York, I believe. But it's adaptive wear and fashionable. It's things that honestly I would wear, right? Like, I mean, and you know my sense of fashion.
This is fantastic. Like, love. So mostly software product companies with a cool exception. But then that's a cool exception, isn't it?
Right.
So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that, Ashif. You and I crossed paths, if I recall, first when we were working on the Alberta tech ecosystem and the push to sort of encourage our community to come together as an ecosystem, and then with government to provide supports. Clearly, I think we both are operating and are passionate about Alberta tech ecosystem. You are very vocal about Alberta as a tech destination. I'd love if you can share a little bit more for those perhaps who are not from Alberta, your perspective on the potential that exists here, and what would you like to see happen?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I look at my various companies, and if I look at what was the common theme, why did they succeed? It's the talent. Mm-hmm. And there's something, even with Upside, because we were in 150 countries, and like I said, you named the company and they were our customer. The common thing I got from our customers is, where do you find your people? They're the most talented, the most driven, the most energetic people that they work with. And so I think that's our secret sauce here, is we have something in our water that the talent is just incredible. That's one of the Alberta advantages. Obviously, our cost
entrepreneurial, it almost like it. Obviously, I also live in Alberta, but I moved to Alberta actually from Vancouver, and then I moved to Canada. So if you play the back movie, we both have an immigrant story as a story of origin. And you are absolutely, Alberta is bursting with this entrepreneurial, go get it done energy. And
totally, yeah. Look at.
It's infectious.
Yeah. Well, like my in-laws moved from Tanzania and they moved to Toronto.
Yeah.
And, and then, they kind of heard that Alberta is booming and they came here. And, again, same kind of story, lost almost everything. And, when the interest rates were at 20% and so forth, but built a spectacular hotel business, right? And, if you ask them, it's the same thing. The Alberta energy and passion and culture of entrepreneurship is not something you'll find anywhere else. Yeah. And so to me, the Alberta advantage is that our cost of living obviously is among the lowest, including our taxation and so forth. Now, when we look at AI and data centers, energy is going to be a big need for these data centers, and our inherent, resource of natural gas that's here is a very good way of powering these data centers.
Absolutely.
Right? It's cheap, it's quick, it's efficient.
And it's cleanest of all carbons, yes.
It's the cleanest of all carbons. And you get some saying, well, but it needs to, you need to have not a zero footprint, but a near zero footprint. And I'm like, sure, you can still do that. You can still have solar farms and wind energy and so forth to provide that ESG difference, right? The credits, if you will. You can still do all of that. And at some point, we'll get to small modular nuclear reactor. We'll get there.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just not there yet, right?
Yeah.
So we will get there.
Yeah.
But right now, this is your cleanest and your best source.
Yeah.
Right? And we've land. We have infrastructure. We have fiber, right? Like, thanks to companies like TELUS who have fiber everywhere, we have that network.
Yeah.
So, and now we have the talent. So honestly, I don't know why you go anywhere else.
Exactly. Like, all the ingredients are here. It's the matter of connecting the dots. It's the matter of having access to capital. And I think it's the matter of being more willing to take on risk.
Yeah.
by both institutional investors, but also by people who are embarking on these adventures.
Yeah.
Be what you said at the very beginning. If I lose it, I will make it again.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and
The
I'm really happy with our plan at the government level for innovation, right? As an
Yeah,
example, like I love what Minister Glubish is doing with all the different things, all the different files, and just that drive to make the government a lot more efficient and a
yeah,
lot more AI savvy and ready.
yeah,
So I think that'll play out really well.
yeah, yeah. And what is also, I think, important, we mentioned Nate as an institution in Edmonton that is focused on producing people who actually have practical skills, which I think actually where we are heading as a society, those practical skills, I think, are going to emerge as critically important. So we have Nate in Edmonton, we've got SAIT in Calgary, which is sort of its sister organization. But then when we start talking about computer science and artificial intelligence and quantum computing and that world-leading research, many people don't know that both Edmonton and Calgary are actually on the world map for this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, any maybe reflections on how do you view University of Calgary and University of Alberta in this ecosystem?
Both have, again, great programs. Both are very entrepreneurial and both focus on, different disciplines with the aim to be excellent at that.
Yeah, and
And so,
complementary.
exactly. U of A, along with Amy, as you know, top 5 in the world for artificial intelligence, right?
So
And
this
there's
is
a
like
reason.
this is worth saying again, like top 5 in
Top
the
5.
world
Yeah.
on artificial intelligence research.
Yeah.
Especially like reinforcement learning was, I don't know if we can say it was started here, but
Yeah, it was.
it was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Dr. Rich Sutton, that he is
Exactly.
known
Yeah.
as the father of reinforcement learning, right? And, obviously getting Turing Award kind of, I think, says it all, right? That's Nobel Prize in computing.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. And that's right here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So sum of all is for those who want to start a business around technology, Alberta is the place to seriously look at. We have the infrastructure, we've got great academic institutions, we've got talented people, supportive government that I think is also very important in the context of being an enabler and a referee. I think we are in this fortunate position in Alberta that our government is, I think, creating a conducive environment for business, wants to take on the role of a referee without meddling in people's lives and business. I think it's actually it's a very good balanced system that we have. And on top of that, it's a safe and prosperous province, of course, huge span of land and incredible natural resources, both natural and human resources, I guess.
100%. Exactly.
I'm just reconvincing myself that being here is the
And all you got to do is, on the weekend, take a drive out to Jasper or Banff. And
yeah.
when you see that, it's kind of like, you get a natural reset, right? Like if you have any stress, that just goes away. Like, and that's the Alberta advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I love you have shared, of course, a lot about your upbringing and values that were instilled by your family and so forth. As a leader, how would you describe your leadership philosophy?
I'd say it has evolved and it's continually evolving, right? When I first started, was I as empathetic as I am right now? No. It was about let's get the job done, right? And so I think as a first time startup founder, you're very passionate, you're very driven. There is no work-life balance. It's just work.
Yeah.
Things like that. And over time, I've learned that I was wrong. because I think you can still create a great business with proper work-life balance, right? I think you have now the ability to work a lot smarter, and working hard is important, but working smarter is more important.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that empathy and kind of, helping the team along goes a long way. I did not used to do that. Right. I know I was very focused, very driven. And it was always, that goal, whatever the goal was, to get that. But as you reflect and as you learn, you just figure these things out. And, at the end of the day, if we're not healthy, we've got nothing, right?
Exactly.
So killing yourself working 20 hours a day is not going to be healthy, right? It is going to eat at you. So, so I've become more of a fan of that leadership style of just balance. Be happy. Health, family first. Work is after that, definitely. And I don't know if I did that at the beginning. It was work at the expense of health.
Yes. Yeah. That's very, very important and powerful. And related question: you are in demand. Your time, of course, is in demand. People want you to be on their boards. People want you to be their mentor. People want you to be. How do you balance all of these commitments that you now have?
I think it's important to set expectations. So I do a number of talks and so forth, and I always get the ask, and can I meet you for coffee and all that? And I'll say, I'm sorry, I just can't do that, right? Because meeting you for coffee means a 20-minute drive, then this and then coming. It just doesn't work.
Yeah,
I'm happy to have a 10 or 15-minute call with you, as long as you're prepared to send me 3 questions ahead of time. And that's rare. Ultimately, send me your top 2 or 3 questions and I'll answer it over email. So it may come across as rude or obnoxious or whatever, but it's just, I sit on umpteen boards. I have 190 portfolio companies. I obviously cherish my family, so that to me comes first. So anytime they need, I'm going to give them first. Things like that, right? And so with everything combined, I can't be doing all these things. So, and I just realized that, right, early on, saying I've got to be honest. And so some people might take that as being rude or whatever, but it's like that's all I can do, and I'm okay with that. Yeah.
So boundaries, in other words, you are setting boundaries that are respectful but firm.
Yeah, and everybody that works with me knows, like, don't send me a long email because it's not going to get read, right? And it's got to be emails that I can answer yes, no, or sounds good. Like it's got to be very, very quick things. And even calls, it's like I don't do more than a 20-minute call ever. Like it's just even board meetings that I used to be on, where it was 3 hours, I brought it down to an hour. Like if we can't do it in an hour, it's not worth doing. Like,
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Ashif, we spoke about your family and the entrepreneurial spirit that goes back. I hear all the way to your grandfather, and probably if we prick, there'll be before then entrepreneurs in the family. And I know that this spirit continues into the next generation of Mawjis too. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, again, I count my blessings every day. Great family, from my parents, my in-laws, my uncles and aunts, my brother, like everybody has been very supportive. My wife is the powerhouse in the family. So, she runs a very large division at TELUS. I forget how many tens of thousands, like 10-ish thousand people that work for her. And I don't know how many billion, like maybe I'm guessing here, but in the $10 billion range of revenues, she's responsible for.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit more. So she's the smarter one, and the driven one. So the benefit our kids have of having her as a role model, because she's balancing, the family, the paternal, as well as the business, and how she juggles all that. They're seeing all that every day, and it's inspiring for them. So they've learned a ton. I'll share a few things, but they have that benefit. So they're both like my younger one. He's 15. He's had an internship at an AI company in Calgary. Like they're a large company, cement, and does amazing work for them. Like the CEO loves them, and he's doing all this cool stuff there. And so this summer he's got a full time internship. Right now, during school, he does 2 or 3 hours a day for them.
Wow.
Right, and he gets paid. My oldest son has a new startup, and he's second year university. And it's actually to help other startups and investors. So it's called scaleupmap.com, and basically for entrepreneurs to log in, and it's going to help them through that whole journey from startup to scale, right? It's using agentic AI and a coaching mechanism. As an investor, I love it because I upload the pitch deck of a company that's pitching me and their URL, and in 10 minutes, I get a full in-depth investment memo with risk assessment, scoring, things that would have taken me 2 weeks through analysts and whatever to do. In 10 minutes, I get that. Okay, so powerful platform. So excited about what he's got going, and he's learning, right? Because he's got now paid employees and co-founders and
you just explained your son's business in the same way that you started yours.
Yeah.
He's figured out a way to cut 3 weeks worth of effort into 10 minutes, and this is how you started. You started.
Exactly.
That's what you said in the beginning, eh?
Yeah. So with both of them, it's just fun to see their passion and just that hardworking, and I'm proud as like for me, it's forget about building upside and building whatever else, like great, but the proudest thing is the kids.
Yeah.
Right. If they turn out well, then yeah.
Absolutely. That's the accomplishment.
Yeah.
Ashif, fantastic. I mean, your family is the example of you are setting the example. So thank you very much for that. I have a last question that I wanted to ask you about. Like, let's play forward the movie. Your vision for the future. I would love to hear, where do you think things are going, actually? And we can take it in any angle you want, from perspective of Alberta and our tech ecosystem, Canada, North America, or the world. Where do you think this is all heading to?
We're at an interesting juncture, I think. AI is showing its power and its ability to evolve and be smarter and do a lot of things, right? And so there's a fear of displacement of jobs, obviously.
Yeah.
And there will be displacement of jobs. There's no question. There is, I don't know if it's angst or whatever, but society is getting very polarized, right?
Yeah.
And this is a chance for leaders to bring people together and not divide them further, right? And I think we're in this cycle of divisive politics, which I think will backfire. I think because ultimately people, like the populists and so forth, but then realize, hey, maybe I made a mistake there, right? And I think they'll come around so I think it's a chance for new leaders to emerge, those with empathy, those that can see every color on the political spectrum, right? So more centrist, I think, is where, because one way is not right and the other way is not wrong. They're both right. Okay. You need to come up with a balance. So middle is the right way of going.
The middle path.
And I think exactly. And I think with all the job displacements, et cetera, if we're not careful, there'll be a lot of poverty, right? There'll be the rich and there'll be the poor. There'll be no middle class.
Yeah.
And we cannot have a society that lives like that. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
So So UBI, universal basic income, I think has to be fundamental.
Yep.
Things like food, water, and shelter will have to be practically free. And there's ways to do that.
Yes.
And I think if we do that, we're going to have a society where we're not going to have 5-day work weeks. We're going to have much less.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to have more time to reflect, more time to do things that we are passionate about, whether it's the arts or culture, whatever we want to do. Right. We're going to have that time. because we're not going to worry about food, water, or shelter.
Yeah.
That's going to be there.
Yeah.
And so now we have the time to explore, time to reflect, the time to be kind. We're going to live longer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of the diseases, with AI will get eradicated.
Yeah.
So I think we have a chance to build a really great future.
Yes.
But this is now not for you and I. We're at a different age, Oliver, but the younger generation needs to step up.
Yes.
And they need to get into the politics, and they need to get into that leadership,
Yes.
whether it's in organizations, in political systems, etc. Because I'm really excited about this generation because they are more empathetic and they're more thoughtful and they're more caring. So bring that into the organization that you're in, and things will proliferate from there.
Yeah. Yeah. You're describing this age of abundance, as I call it, where, and I think that as the work gets displaced through automation and autonomy, a lot of displacement will occur through AI being deployed to replace human work. But this is only a part of displacement. I think that even greater displacement is going to come when AI manifests itself in physical form through humanoid robots and other sort of physical automation. So I think that we can, if you think about this, it's inevitable. If you get faster, cheaper, more dexterous and safer solution, everybody's going to go for it. And if that is not a human, you see what's happening. So I think that what you're describing is the challenge, I think, for the species. It is going to completely change our social structure, and hopefully to that positive, but it could also go sideways. So I think the trick is really how do you do it in a way that that there is that these two curves end up in the right spot, a spot where we truly can create basic bottom layers of Maslow pyramid are solved for everyone, right? And that we are leveraging this displacement as a gift, as that job displacement becomes a gift to individuals to act on their passions and their purpose, instead of that being the horrifying view into poverty, right? So I think that we are in a critical moment, and I love your call out. It is the young generation that needs to step up, feel this, and lead us towards that better end.
If I can sum up what I learned from my, and I'm still active in the Henry Crown Fellowship, it's one of those things where it's with you for life.
Yeah.
But it resonates with what we just talked about. And it's a simple phrase. Just because you can, should you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it brings in that thinking of ethics, morals, values. Just
Absolutely.
because you can charge $900 for an EpiPen, should you?
Should you? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So these are the things that I know that many are. We all ought to be teaching our children that at the end of the day, we have responsibility not just for ourselves, but we have responsibility for each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all the same.
Exactly.
We're all on this planet together.
Yeah. And we are flying in space on this small rock. Ultimately, like, we are all facing the same destiny. We are all in this together, and the now is actually real opportunity because of the technology and connectedness to truly pull 8 billion people towards a better future. And Ashish, we are coming at time. Thank you very much for this whole hour of conversation. It's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you very much. We will of course post this on our YouTube channel, and I'll send the links very shortly. Ashif, it's a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you for everything you're doing for the city and for the province and for the country, and of course for our ecosystem. So,
well, thank you for taking the time, and really appreciate our conversation. Really loved it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashif, and all the best to you. Bye-bye.